Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today we bring you a very special episode, one that we finally get to talk to our first author. This is an author who emigrated from Japan at the age of 8. She's detoured from her love of books by becoming the first Asian woman attorney in Colorado.
Ayumi's Violin, a middle grade historical novel, and Swept Away, a young adult novel, have garnered a total of 6 literary awards. Blossoms on a Poison Sea is her first adult fiction. When not writing in her home in the Rocky Mountains, she hikes, skis, and kayaks. Welcome to Mariko Tatsumoto.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Would you like to include anything else with the bio that we just shared?
Well, just that I'm also a huge animal lover and I love sports.
Yeah. Do you have any pets at home?
Not right now. I usually have 2 or 3 dogs at a time, but situation has changed in my life. And so right now I don't, but I plan to again. Do you?
Yes, we have 2 cats.
Ah, they're fun.
Yeah. And I can say we really love the use of cats in this book that you wrote. It was a part that kind of highlighted a little fire in our life. I know there was a negative outcome to it a bit, but I think in the end, what the cats gave us was so useful. And I feel like that's what cats always do, is they provide us with something useful.
Yes, I know that I had a comment by a reader recently about how I tortured the cats in the book, but it really did happen. So I hope people don't think that I just tortured the cats, but yeah, that was one of those experiments they do with animals.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think there was a certain sense of love between the main characters and the cats that wasn't unnoticed. I mean, there was definitely a fact that the people had loved the cats and it wasn't done just out of spite or hurt or anything like that. So I definitely saw it as the cats were a hero within the story rather than just being tortured.
Mhm.
Yeah, they certainly were victims just like people were.
Right, exactly. So going into the interview questions, who are you outside of writing?
Well, I live in a very small town, about 15,000 people in the Rocky Mountains. And so I like a lot of solitude, not really solitude, just being by myself all the time, but solitude and being around nature all the time. And that's very important to me. So that's probably my main thing in life is to be with nature.
Definitely. Do you have any specific places in nature that you enjoy spending time in?
Well, I'm in the mountains. I live right in the mountains, so when I ski, if I'm downhilling, or I live on a lake, so in the wintertime it freezes over, and so I also cross country ski there. So it's really wonderful just to go in my backyard, and to be able to cross country ski. I have to drive to in order to get to the ski area, but yeah, all of that is really important to me to be able to be with nature all the time.
Nice. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Sounds like you're in your happy place.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. You are in,
We're in Portland, Oregon, and we have a lot of nature surrounding us as well.
right, right. Yeah, I've been there. It's a beautiful place. You're not right on the ocean, are you? You're pretty close to the ocean?
Yeah, we're like an hour and a half,
Mhm.
hour to hour and a half away.
Oh, okay. But don't you have a big river right there? Is that the Columbia or something?
Yes,
Yep.
we do have the Columbia River running through the city.
Yeah, and that is big. I mean, it's not just like a little river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A little bit more about your book. If we would love to know what was your inspiration behind Blossoms on a Poison Sea, and were there any interesting moments that came up while writing this book?
Well, W. Eugene Smith was sent in 1972 to Japan by Life magazine to cover the Minamata disease. And it was the first time that really the word was getting outside of Japan. And I remember seeing Life magazine, like every family in America, subscribed. And I remember seeing that and just being really horrified by it. And then I grew up and really didn't think a lot of it. And then about 10 years ago, I don't know why, it just came to me and I thought, I wonder whatever happened to all those people and the disease and everything. So I looked it up just on the internet, and what I found was information was very sketchy and all secondhand. Somebody went and looked at some records and they put it on the internet. And now that you can find more, but even 10 years ago, it was very sketchy. So I decided to do my own research and try to get firsthand accounts. And by that, I meant like trying to find documentaries and books that were written and taken, at that time. So I did find a few of those books, read them. They're all marked up. You should see, they're all just marked up because I took so many notes and everything from that. And then I found this documentary that was made. It's very grainy because it was made late 1950s. It is very hard to watch because they went to usually these fishermen's families, and then they talked to and filmed, these victims. So I did that to get as much knowledge as I could. But one of the things was, I was in Japan around that time, but I was still very young. So to make sure that the characters, clothing, settings, and what kind of cars and all that kind of stuff was accurate to that period of time, I went and watched a number of movies in Japan, of course, that time, and it was really fun. I found some movies I'd never heard of that were great to watch. So that was something that came out of my research that I liked.
Definitely.
It seems like you put in so much time and effort into this, and it definitely shows in your book. How long did it actually take you to complete the whole book?
I say about 3,000 hours.
Wow.
I started this book maybe around 2017 or so. And it took me a year or two to write it at that time. And my agent at that time couldn't sell it, couldn't get any takers. So I sort of put it away like I did with other books that she couldn't sell. And then during the pandemic, I started pulling some of the manuscripts that were just sort of hidden away in my computer, and this was one of them. And then I started working on it again and really revamped everything and redid the whole thing. But I'd say about 3,000 hours, a lot of research and a lot
Wow.
of rewrite to make it all fit together.
That's amazing.
Definitely. Let's jump into the book a little bit. While reading, we noticed that chapter 20 title, Make Japan Great Again, caught our attention. Can you share how you decided on that title?
So that chapter is about sort of explaining through Kyo's father, Kichiro, about what had happened to Japan and what was happening economically at that time. So unlike US, where we didn't get bombs here, Japan was bombed to death practically.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and of course the two atomic bombs. So not so much where Minamata Bay is, they weren't really bombed there, but in the rest of the country, it was just devastated. There weren't enough places for people to live. Food was scarce. And in order to try to rebuild, one of the things that the country was doing was they were manufacturing these trinkets, these cheap products like umbrellas in your drinks and that kind of thing. And I remember being here in the US and being shocked at what people would say about Japan. Oh, they're stupid, they're lazy, this is all they can make, these little trinkets. And anyway, so they were feeling these effects in Japan and they were embarrassed by it. And they were willing to work very hard and practically do anything in order to get back to a nation where you're producing top of the line products, things like that. So I thought about, each chapter has a little title. And I thought about, since that's really the focus of that chapter, what to call it. And I thought about things like, rebuild Japan or whatever, I'm going through all that. But actually, the best title I could come up with, Make Japan Great Again. I did see the similarity, of course, with the MAGA. So I sent my manuscript to my editor, beta readers, And no one said a thing. I mean, no one said anything about, you sure you want to do this or anything like that? So I thought, okay, so people aren't going to make an issue of this, didn't think anything about it. So I just kept it. But I am very apolitical kind of a person. I'm sort of like center more. And I really didn't mean anything by it. So, and actually, even through now, when I get comments from readers or something, I've never heard anybody talk about that. They talk about like torturing cats or something.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry if that did offend you, but it was not written in that vein at all.
I don't think it came off as a way of being contributed to like the MAGA movement. I think just the words being so closely correlated was the only reason why we would have thought that. But I agree with exactly the point that you're stating, that it definitely seemed like a point that Kichiro was trying to get Japan back up. And that was actually something that we found a little bit contentious, because I think I was more on the side of Kichiro seemed like a good person just trying to make it in this world. And we had this debate on whether Kichiro was good, evil, or something else entirely. Did you have any thoughts on that point?
I was creating a character who was in a powerful position at that period of time. And those people, and it's still true today, that when men, of course, women, but really it's mostly men, especially back then, it was all men.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You joined the company and it was for life. And it went both ways. The company, even if they were going through a bad financial time, they didn't let you go. They kept your job and so on. And people worked very, very hard. And Kichiro is one of these people who worked very hard, was very loyal to his company, but also had loyalty, of course, to his family. The family had a good life. He sent his boys to the best schools. It's just that he was pulled in two different directions. So he was trying to do the best he can, which later, of course, later that's revealed. And I wanted to show a little bit of humanity there with the peach story, that kind of thing. As far as the way he might have spoken sharply to his sons, that's also a very Japanese father kind of thing. My father spoke to me that way. And since everyone talks like that, you don't really think anything of it. That's just the way he talks. But I think that he was really just a good person trying to do the best he can for his family and his company. And yet at the very end, he just couldn't cope with what was happening to the people.
I agree. I think this might have been where our backgrounds between Jamae and I kind of played into how we read this book, because my father was also extremely stern, and that was the way he talked to me. And I understood that from Kichiro's character. I think when we think about Jamae's father, he's very loving and he's very willing to open himself up. So it presented
Oh,
a little differently to both of us, but I fully understood Kichiro's character and how contentious it was within his soul. And it almost seemed like the thought and the process of how he was trying to deal with everything seemed like a poison that was growing inside of him, especially seeing him slowly deteriorate like over time and having to continue to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
right. Well, it's just wonderful, Janae, that you had such a loving father. I think that must have been wonderful to grow up like that.
I think our fathers loved us too. They just loved us a little bit differently.
Oh, absolutely. My parents weren't wealthy at all, but boy, they, whatever lessons I needed or whatever I needed, they always paid for that. So
Absolutely.
they just show their affection in different ways.
Absolutely.
Yes, for sure. You also covered a lot of topics within this book, like the effect of corporate greed, the division among classes, and society's willful ignorance when it comes to obvious wrongdoings. Was there something specific you were hoping readers would take away from the story?
Well, of course, the main thread is the disease
Mm-hmm.
and the corporate corruption that went with it. But I believe that every reader brings their own interests and their own opinions, of course, to every book. And that's why it's so interesting to hear what people's varying opinions are about the same book. I just hope that each person will find something, one or two points or whatever more, that they're going to give it some thought. And then optimally, they might actually change something about their thinking, or maybe take enough interest that they might follow environmental pollution, write letters, because I write letters all the time about that kind of thing. But as whatever each person wants to take away from it is fine with me. And I hope that some of the other topics that perhaps they've never thought about, that they will give it some thought. Not everyone's going to become an activist or anything like that, but at least they have some more knowledge about what to do in the future if they encounter something else.
Yeah, I agree. I think you clearly put in so much effort and thought into this book, and it shows with the soul of the writing that you wrote. So I feel like between Jamae and I, it hit a lot of points that we think about on a daily basis. So it definitely meant a lot to us to kind of go through this book and also see how much seemingly you cared about all these topics that we also care about.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So moving forward, do you have anything you'd like to promote? Where would you like people to find you and your work?
Well, of course, I would like everybody to read my books, but with Blossoms, one of the things that I think that it would be very appropriate in the classrooms. If it can take fiction that's written well, hopefully, a lot of times people are warmer to that than a textbook.
Mhm.
So if it can be used in classrooms, of course, it'd be a little bit older, high school or college or something like that, so that people can follow history, culture, pollution, or whatever. I think that that would be wonderful. And people can buy Blossoms on almost any platform. You can buy it on Amazon or Indie Books or Barnes and Noble or whatever else. And then if I can plug this is my seventh book that I've published. But and of course, I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but if I could plug a few of these books.
Yeah, no, this is your
Absolutely.
time to shine. We'd love to hear it.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll show you this. But this is Ayumi's Violin. It is a middle grade book set around 1960 about a violin prodigy who must start a new life with a new family in a new country.
Mhm.
That was my first fiction book that I ever published. This one is Accidental Samurai Spy. It is also a middle grade book set in the mid 1850s. A boy and his dog who must save his clan against an enemy army is the protagonist in this book. I always love this one, and really a fun one. Then lastly is Swept Away. This is a young adult set in contemporary time. Through Sumo, an orphan teen must kill his broken spirit to save his uncle from deadly Yakuza gangsters.
Wow. Yeah, I have a nephew that's about 11, 12, and I feel like would be so fascinated by that samurai spy book.
Yeah, yeah. So that's actually taken, it's not really taken from Tom Cruise's Last Samurai, but it's set in the same era, and it's about the same topic as far as they're going to do away with the samurai clan, the class, and what is happening about that, except that this is from a viewpoint from a younger boy instead of an adult. So it's again, all my books have themes that go with them, but hopefully fun reads too.
Yeah, and we'll post that on our Instagram and make sure that everyone knows what they look like so that they can order it too. Before we have you go, one question that we want to ask to all our authors is just what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Hands down, strawberry.
Yeah, that's a
Nice.
good one.
What do you
For me, I can't really do ice cream, but I do really love like a vanilla with cookies in it. So like a cookies and it's not really cookies and cream, but
It is cookies and cream.
yeah.
My favorite is chocolate. I love chocolate with almonds in it.
Well, I'm sure that's a favorite for many people.
Hmm.
Well, Mariko, we really appreciate you taking your time. We appreciate you going through this book with us. We had such a great time reading it. We were really able to enjoy the spirit of everything that you were kind of giving us. So we thank you again for joining us on this platform. For anyone that wants to find out more about us, how can people do so?
Y'all can email us at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com, and you can also DM us on Instagram at Asian Book Club Pod.
And we also have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, that has our bookshop, that has books that we've read in the past, books that we recommend, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat.
Bye.
Bye.